Okay, welcome back. Righty. Share my screen. Okay, any questions before moving to quantitative variables? Okay, so in quantitative variables, that's the variables that we're used to. It's the usual numbers that we collect, we summarize, organize, and whatnot. Now, there are two ways or actually four ways of looking at the quantitative variables. So the two ways that I'm mentioning here, they're more on the broader way of looking at it. And then we will talk about two other distinctions, which are the actual most common distinctions for quantitative variables. So let's talk about these two types first. So when we talk about intervals, we're talking about a set of variables that don't have that have a certain range, but that where the zero doesn't make any sense. Like if we take temperature, for instance. So temperature 0 doesn't mean that there's no temperature. It's just that the temperature is equal. The interval goes from I don't know what it goes from, minus 200 something to plus something. So it goes from minus to plus. I don't know what the full range is, but 0 is just another value. Doesn't mean that that it's actually 0. So that's what interval is. Interval, like it could be like sizes, for instance. Size 0 doesn't make a sense, although there is a size. Yeah, there. I don't know if I mean, I heard that models need to be a size 0, but I'm talking about sizes for shirts, for instance. There's it goes from 30. I think it starts with 32. I think it's the smallest one, 32, and then it goes up to 40 something. So it can't start from a 0. It has to start from 32 or 30, because that's what the nature of an interval. It goes from like a certain value to another without necessarily having, and the 0 doesn't make any sense. Versus the ratio, where here the more we go to the end, the higher it gets. So if I'm taking grades, a grade of 0 means that's that's really that's a true 0, so that the student is not performing, and a grade of A plus, although 0 doesn't exist anymore in the grades, and that's a student that's well performing. So mostly we will be working with ratios, because those are the ones that make sense to do comparisons with. But that doesn't mean that we can't do analysis on intervals as well. We just need to be mindful that in intervals, the 0 doesn't necessarily mean 0. Any questions on these two differentiations between interval and ratio for quantitative variables? Okay. Yes, Shalini.
Yeah, I've always had this question in me, like, why is it important to have two scales with one having a definite zero and one without that? Like, what does that make a difference? Like,
Uh, it makes it makes a difference when we're trying to analyze the data, because so let's say we're trying to, like, if we're trying to find the mean, let's yeah the mean temperature, say for a certain city, throughout the year and whatnot. So if we're trying to do that, there will be times when the temperature would be 0, right? So we need to take into account that those zeros are not true zeros. So they're not. That doesn't mean that there's no temperature. It's just that the value is close to 0. So because that would, if we're taking the mean, it would be like we're skipping values, right? When that would actually not. It's just that uh, uh, it's just that that's the state of it, versus the ratio when if I see a zero, that means that that I can make a conclusion about it. In temperatures, I can't make a conclusion necessarily.
Right, that
Does that
makes
make any
sense.
sense?
Yes, yes, I
Right?
get that now. Yeah, thanks.
And there are intervals that don't have a zero, like a size or a weight. There's no weight that is zero. Like weight is something. So you have to weight higher than something. Everything weights something. So even so so there are scales that would require to work with intervals versus ratio.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? And please keep in mind that this is not the most important distinction. The important distinction for quantitative variables is between discrete and continuous, which we will cover in the next slide. But just in terms of intervals and ratios, are we good?
Yeah, so far so good.
Okay. Okay.